Thank you, Dr. Peake, for agreeing to do this workshop. I think it's going to be a great one. Thanks for everyone who joined. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself and get started.
Yeah, thanks so much, April.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Peake. I'm a faculty member at the University of Georgia. I work in agricultural leadership, education, and communication. I'm a Kentucky native, um, was a teacher and went to grad school in Florida for a while, then off to Texas, where I worked in Austin for a short time, and then earned my doctorate from Texas A&M, and I've been a faculty member at the University of Georgia, for 21 years now, which is hard to believe, but that's what I do now, and I train ag teachers. I also, just kind of as a side note, but relevant to this, I've started several small businesses on the side. Um, so for those small businesses, currently I have 5 employees that I've had to interview and make unilateral hiring decisions on. And then for the University of Georgia, when I served as director of academic programs for the Tifton campus, I was in charge of hiring there as well. And I don't know how many search committees I've been on, maybe 25 search committees, and been a big part of the hiring process. So that's my background. And we have a really small group, but I'm glad you guys are here today. I just want to confirm real quick, is my PowerPoint coming through still okay?
I see it on my side, yeah. Is anybody having trouble? I think it should be fine.
We should be fine. Okay. I'm going to turn on my chat just in case if anybody needs to add something into the chat box. And I'm going to go ahead and go through our topic today, introduce that. We're talking about mastering interviewing skills, which there aren't many topics that'll bring more anxiety to more people in the world than going through an interview process. It's inherently stressful. You're being judged. They're trying to decide if you're worth having around. And it's also very high stakes, especially if you're a new graduate and you would like to make a living, it's pretty stressful. So I put together just a few, what I would consider the most important things that we could talk about. This is a very short presentation. It only has 6 slides with content. So we'll take a look at those real quick. And then at the end, I'll try and save time so we can answer any questions or address any concerns that you guys might have. So I thought it would be good if you guys left here with some actual product, what you're going to do when you go into the interview. And so the first thing I want you guys to think about and work on, and we're going to talk about, is the question, tell me about yourself. That is going to happen in every interview that you ever go to. Almost always, that's the opening line. They say, tell me about yourself. So we're going to go through what the answer for that should look like. And then I'd like for you guys to demonstrate that. I'd like for you to we're going to do that. Next, we're going to talk about analyzing interviewer expectations on key qualities, which are skills, fit, and mindset. And so basically, how do you demonstrate those 3 areas? And that's exactly when you go into an interview, the expectation is that you can show the employer, what skills do you have that directly align with the job description? Why are you a good fit for that company and its culture? And then why do you bring the correct mindset into that meeting, into that company? So I think that is just, it's kind of interviewing 101, but a lot of people fail to address all 3 of those areas, and you need to. And then finally, talking about professional communication techniques and what your body language and eye contact should look like. I see a lot of people get this wrong, and so I want to spend a little time talking about it. So that's our objectives for today. We've got 30 minutes together, so I'm not going to go super deep in these, but I do think we can get a good start on them. So my very first slide here, guys, don't show up to the test unprepared. And I put a little acronym in here of company. You have to do your homework before the interview. I cannot overstate this enough. You need to know what their culture looks like. What is that workplace like? And you need to do this for yourself just to know whether or not you're a good fit, whether or not you want to be there. Because you may find out they're ultra competitive and that's not what you enjoy. You may enjoy a very collaborative environment. Uh, what are their offerings? What is it that they do? What's their mission? What's their long-term plan? Sometimes they'll have a strategic plan. What projects are they currently working on? Um, who are they working against? Who are their adversaries out in the market? So if it's a company, it's easy to identify those. But we have the same thing when it comes to universities. Universities still compete for resources, grants, funds, students, you name it. We're going after the same pot. What's notable about that company? Their history, their leadership, and then finally your fit. Um, how do you connect? Now, I'll tell you guys a few stories as I go through this. At the bottom, I put on there, I'm borderline stalking people before an interview. And it's probably not borderline. I really am stalking people prior to an interview. Um, I probably go overboard, but I have a really good success rate with my interviews. And I also, um, I've been on the hiring side a lot where people come in and they haven't researched us and they don't know what we're like before they walk in the door. I'll just tell you guys. Well, I'll give you an example. When I was on the Tifton campus, I was hiring an administrative assistant. So I'm going to work with this person a lot. They're going to be every day. I'm going to interact with this person. Uh, really good job. Was in a rural part of South Georgia, so it was a high-paying job, and it was with the University of Georgia. So for this position, which I advertised for 30 days, I had 180 applications. So you can imagine if I have 180 applications, I'm looking for every reason I can to narrow that down. And when I get their resumes, if they have any spelling mistakes, if there are any grammatical errors, if there's anything at all that I dislike about this person that I can see on that resume, they go in the trash immediately. Um, I have 180 applications. I mean, I'm not struggling to find a good one. I'm I'm not struggling to find application. I'm struggling to find the best application. So, even then, I might narrow it down to 4 or 5 to bring in for interviews. And that's a very time consuming process. So when I bring them in, if they haven't done their research about who we are, what we do, how we work, they should know who the people interviewing them are. And um, if they don't do that, we're not going to waste our time. I just tell you, it's a very time consuming process. So you have got to do that work ahead of time. Now, here's our first activity I want you guys to do. And I don't know if everybody will be completely comfortable with this, but if you don't mind turning on your cameras, I would like to see who's in here. And I would like to go through this. This question is going to start off almost every one of your interviews. The question is going to be, or the statement is going to be, tell me about yourself. That is absolutely standard operating procedures for the beginning of an interview. Here is what they're looking for. When they say, tell me about yourself, you want to go through this format: the past, the present, the future. This is where I come from. So you're going to keep that professional and job relevant. This is where I come from and how it's connected to this job. Here is where I currently am, and you can tell them about your education, your current work, whatever it is that you're currently doing, and then your future. Where is it that you want to go? You should be able to get this answer down to less than 3 minutes, and it should follow that format. So you've got about a minute on your past, about a minute on your present, and about a minute on your future. Now, the only thing that has ever tripped me up a little bit with this when I was younger, I wasn't sure how far into the future to go. And so now I don't try to go beyond 5 years. I think anything beyond 5 years, I'm guessing. And so I do, in the next 3 to 5 years, here's where I see myself. Now, if you've done your homework, you know what's important to this company, and you know that you have to customize this solution, this answer to that company. And so everything that you talk about should in some way directly connect with that particular job, that job description, that company, what they're doing. You cannot have a generic answer for this. That's not what they're looking for. I hate to say this in a harsh way. They're not really interested in your hobbies. And like I have that sometimes. I'll ask this question and people will tell me about their hobbies and the other things they're doing. Look, that's interesting. And if we were meeting in a restaurant or a bar, sure, I'd love to learn more about you. However, this is a job interview. I'm looking for how you are relevant to this position. And there may be a few cases, like if I was interviewing with an animal science company and you said, well, I grew up with 4-H and I showed steers, or I have a purebred line of Angus that I'm have 20 head of cattle, and I'm starting my own Angus breeding program or something like that. Sure, if it's relevant to the job, you should talk about that. Otherwise, we should not do that. Okay, 3 minutes is kind of long for this answer. What I would tell you to do is your first limit, start at 3 minutes, work backwards a little bit, and try to get it down to 2. But it's either easier if you have a little extra material and then work backwards. So you have to practice this with people. So, April, I don't know, should we pick on somebody and have somebody do this?
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Or maybe if somebody wants to volunteer first, if not, you can you can choose your victim.
I don't know. I feel bad because normally I pick on people I know, but I don't know that I know anyone on this call. Let's see, Haley, can I pick on you?
Or is it? Okay.
Sorry, I'm actually like multitasking. I guess I could try. I don't know.
It's okay. I'm putting you on the spot. This one doesn't have to be perfect. All right. So let's say I'm with USDA and I'm looking to hire someone to be a program coordinator for a USDA project. And so we'll leave it pretty open that you're going to oversee professional development for farmers in an area. And so you come in for this interview, and of course you haven't done your homework, so this is a fictional job. But tell me a little bit about yourself, and just use that format of past, present, future. So just spend a few 30 seconds to a minute on your past, then your present, and then your future. So Haley, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm thinking. Well, a little bit about myself. I grew up in a smaller town outside of Dallas. And so that being said, I have some agricultural background. I grew up with having farm animals. And then I went to college to pursue a animal science degree. After that, I decided to continue my education into a master's of animal science. Doing that program, it's taught me leadership skills and the ability to work in a group, just helping manage undergraduates and graduate students with research. And then future-wise, I hope to continue building on those skills and being more within the science industry.
Very good. All right. So here's some things you did right, and I'm going to give you a little bit of critique. So things that you could maybe work on that. All right. So number one, you didn't go anything off topic. Like you didn't start telling me about anything that was not related to this job. So You said where you're from, which is going to be important relative to this, that you grew up with animals, that you did a bachelor's and master's. Both of those are in animal science related, which is relevant to this job. And then you talk about your future. All that is excellent. You talk about your education, and you specifically said, here are the skills that I have. So those are things that are great. What I would encourage you to practice, and of course, I put you on the spot, so this is an unfair critique today, but you use a little bit of filler where you drag out words. You're like, or you drag out a little bit too much on that. And you want to be very, very specific. You want to be able to say, I attended, and I'm going to point out the ones you did really well. You're like, I went to this institution, I earned this degree, and I would have added the year you graduated. I would have said, I completed that degree in 2022 or something like that. The more specifics you can give in that answer, and remember, we're going to chop this down to about 2 minutes total. That's what you want to do. Now, guys, the reason I started with this question is it's the first question they're going to ask you in an interview. And if you don't do well with this, you kind of set the tone for the interview, and it's not going to look good. If you are off on this, yeah, it's very hard to get them back on track. It's going to be hard to pull that interview back in line. So you got to practice. I would encourage you to write this out, answer the question in detail on a sheet of paper, read it to anybody who will listen, and ask for their feedback on it until you feel very comfortable and confident with it. Now, something else that will happen, the more you practice and the more you're ready for that question, you just come across as more confident in the interview. Like, we have people who come in who are strong, confident speakers, and that's who we're attracted to. We are not attracted to people who hem haw and maybe are. I'll tell you a problem I saw in the South Georgia, and this I think Haley said Texas, but I don't know if it's a problem in Texas. But I can tell you in South Georgia, people view humility as a virtue, so they're very humble. And I would ask people this question, something like, "Why should I hire you?" And they couldn't brag on themselves. It was like almost a part of their culture to say, "Oh gosh, I don't know, Dr. Peake. I don't know that I'm the best one for the job. Maybe you should look at some other folks." And I'm thinking, no. This is an interview. You're selling yourself. You've got to stand up and take pride and say, here's why. Here are the 3 reasons why. So, okay, that's going to happen, guys. That question's going to happen. Here's the next one. So, why are you the right person for the job? Why should I hire you? And here are the 3 things you should hit on. Always address skills, fit, and mindset. That's what the interviewer is looking for. They want to know, what skills do you have that you're bringing into this job that are going to make you the right person? And so talk about those skills. If it's let's say it's a communications job, and you're going to be the person in charge of communications for this ag company or some USDA government project or something. I mean, I want to know exactly, like, photography. Do you know how to use a nice camera? Do you know how to do photo editing? What softwares are you familiar with? Can you set up the lighting correctly? You want to talk about skills in a very specific and applied way for that job. And so you have to know the job description. You have to know what they want. You have to be able to lay that out. Next, your fit. What are your values, and do they align with that company culture's mission and the team dynamics? Like I said, I personally do not enjoy ultra competitive environments. So I worked in the sales industry for a while. It's very competitive. It was part of the culture of the company I worked for that every sales rep was competing with every other sales rep. We celebrated that, like when they would come together for a quarterly meeting, the top salesperson was recognized and the other people were not recognized. So you learn pretty quickly, like, oh, that's what this company cares about. Now, today I work at a university, which is not competitive. It's much more collaborative. This is the right place for me to be. But you have to be able to sell that. Why is it that you're a good fit for that job? And look, I'm not saying it's bad to be competitive. There are people who would hate my job, what I do right now at a university. I love it, but it's not the right fit for everyone. So you have to be very mindful of that. Okay. Finally, mindset. Where are you at? You need to lay out like your adaptability, curiosity. What's your attitude toward that company? Now, this is going to be, you have to be careful about what I'm about to say here. With mindset, it has a lot to do with, how do I say that tactfully? I've never fixed someone's attitude. Like if I hired someone and they came in with a bad attitude, I've never seen their attitude get better. It's ever. And so I'll just tell you, if someone has a bad attitude or the wrong mindset with regards to our company when they walk in, we're not going to hire that person. I would save. Really, I would do us both a favor because they're not going to fit in and they're going to be miserable. I'm not going to enjoy working with them, and so let's save ourselves a lot of trouble and get them out of here before we even hire them. So, all right, this is what they're looking for, guys. I would write down these three things when they say, "Why are you the right person for the job?" You need to go through those three things: skills, fit, and mindset. All right. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about body language because it's been such an awkward issue in the last, I would say, 5 years. This has been more of a problem. You know, to me, this is public speaking 101, very basic stuff that you should already know. But I've had a lot of trouble with this in the last 5 years, and that's body language, eye contact, and verbal responses. The number of people that come in that will not look me in the eye drives me crazy. I have a lot of people come in for an interview who just kind of look down like this, or they look at their hands, or they're looking up at the ceiling or something while they're talking to the committee. And it's like, no, no. I don't care if that's your personality. When you're here at the job, you have to do that. You have to make eye contact and you have to sit upright and you have to speak with us. So a couple of little things to add to that, don't slouch back in your chair. This would be incorrect. What they want you to do is sit all the way back in your chair and lean forward slightly. That's the standard correct position, what I'm doing right now. You do not cross your arms like this because it makes you look closed off to what's going on. It could be perceived as defensive. You put your hands in front of you or in your lap and you keep your fingers interlaced. That's the normal position to be in. You want to be comfortable and confident, not cocky. That's a fine line to balance. But I do think practice helps tremendously with that. And paying attention to other people is also a really good move. Eye contact, try to maintain natural eye contact, avoid staring. Look at, if there's a whole panel, I would always spend a few seconds looking at each person, going back and forth. You just want it to be natural and comfortable. Yeah, verbal responses. This always gets me in trouble. I have a terribly persistent accent that I've worked on. I sound like I'm from Kentucky. I wish I didn't. I wish I had more of a neutral accent, but that's a tough one to fight. But you do want clear, concise language. You can still articulate yourself well. It's something you have to practice outside of the interview. You can't just show up that one day and think that you're going to pull that off, that you're going to have all the correct body language. The truth is, you have to practice that all the time. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it, the more natural it becomes, and the less it looks like an act, and the more it becomes who you really are. So I would really recommend that you just try that. Practice it as much as you can. It is surprising to me how much that trips people up, and it seems to be getting worse. I don't know why. I don't know if we're teaching less public speaking or what's happening, but I have more trouble with it. Um, I will also mention, I said, like, I practically stalk people before the interview. I put together, this is my current job. Um, I work at the University of Georgia right now, but it was funny. I put together this portfolio, uh, ridiculously too big. Like, now I look at it and I'm like, that's crazy. But this is 80 pages of why I'm the perfect fit for the University of Georgia job as a faculty member. Um, I remember coming in, and my department head at the time, when I gave him that, he kind of laughed. And I said, well, you don't have to read it all, but I do want to highlight some of these things that I've done and why I think these would be a good fit at the University of Georgia. And when I first gave it to him, I remember he kind of chuckled, but then as we went through it, he was like, wow, that's really impressive. That's exactly what we want to do. And you've already been working on something similar to that. So um, I don't know. I cannot overstate that, the importance of being prepared for that. It's really important. All right. And then finally, this is the last slide, guys. The one that everybody always gets asked this question, and I've got some of the funniest answers over the years. What's your greatest weakness? Now, my favorite answer, hands down, was a young guy we were interviewing for an IT position at the University of Georgia, who said, I don't have any weaknesses. It's one of the few times I've laughed out loud in the interview, and just was like, I can't believe anybody would say that. Like, that is hilarious that you're so unaware or so braggadocious that you would think you don't have a weakness. But there are some kind of cliche answers. The one I've gotten the most is I'm a perfectionist. That's, almost everybody will say that. Um, and it maybe that's the right answer, but it's almost cliche at this point. And I wouldn't do that anymore. What I would tell you to do, be honest. Don't pick something that's job ending. You know, uh, oh man, I really have this drug addiction problem. It's been plaguing me for years. No, do not say that. You want to pick something that's genuine, that shows self-awareness, that you can acknowledge, and keep it professional, and then talk about how you're working to overcome that. And so usually what I'll pick is some component, like a software or something for that company that I know is important, and then talk about how I view that as a real weakness. So the last job I interviewed for was at a university in another state. And I looked at the structure of their university, and it was really different. They had an advisory board that served sort of like the president. And so their advisory board made decisions on the ground, which is so weird to me for a university. Normally, there's an administrative team, not an advisory board. And so they asked me my greatest weakness, and I said, I don't understand your administrative structure, and I don't understand why it is the way that it is. And I'm not sure that I can function under an advisory board when I'm used to functioning under a different structure. And I went into why that was a problem, why I really was concerned about that. And then I wrapped up with, look, I've studied your structure. I've studied your advisory board. I knew who the members are. And I think I've read the minutes of their meetings. I think I understand what they're doing. However, uh, I have a lot to learn. So that's where I'm at with that. So it's going to be something like that. You want to keep it along those kind of lines, and always end it with how you're growing, how you're going to reconcile that problem. Okay, now that's it. That's the end of our slideshow. So I'm going to stop that. And I don't know, did my screen share stop, April? I just want to make sure.
Yes, it did.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We're at the end here, close 1:30, but I do want to see if I can answer any questions, or if there's anything I can maybe elaborate on if you need it, guys.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
So I know that they tell you that you need to come prepared like with questions for them,
Mm-hmm.
just to show that you're interested. So what would be like a non-cliche good type of question to ask if you actually like for example, I had an interview today and I went to an informational yesterday, so I actually learned a lot about the company and the role, so I didn't have questions about that anymore. So what could be a good type of question if you already know the things regarding that role in that company?
Okay. Do you mind sharing what company it was?
It was a food company. It's Art and Mills.
Okay. On their website, do they have goals or strategic plans or anything like that posted?
Yeah, yeah, but it was mostly covered in the informational before the interview.
Okay.
Even salary, it was very extensive, so I was out of questions to ask because they mostly told us in the informational.
Yeah, I got you. So I would start off with something like this. At the end of the interview, they're going to say, do you have any questions? And I would start off by leading with what you just said. Hey, listen, I was able to go to the informational session yesterday. I asked a lot of questions there and I was able to find answers to those. Thank you so much for allowing us to do that, because I feel like I know the company really well. And then for me, I find some strategic goal or something that they're trying to do. And it's usually something, those strategic goals and overarching values of the company are vague. They'll say something like, we're going to be good stewards of the environment, or we're going to help people realize their full potential. And so then my question about that is, just so they know I've read that, and yeah, I want it to be a genuine question. I would say like, hey, I noticed on your website you said that one of your goals is to, and this, let's say it's a food company, you say you want to make sure there's enough food in every home in Texas or something like that. I say, can you tell me exactly what programs and steps you guys have taken to achieve that goal? I understand the goal. I'm just not sure exactly what you're doing to achieve that. And so, and I would make it something that you're sincerely interested in, that there's no way you can fully grasp that company until you work there. I mean, even after you work somewhere for a while, it's still somewhat muddy. But you could also ask, if you didn't want to go that route, I would want to know things like, hey, I know that I'm going to be part of a team and that I'm going to have let's say a department head or a manager or something like that. What is their communication style? How often do we meet? And what are the expectations on us to be available after hours? Just whatever, but make it sincere, and show. And if you know who that person's going to be, you're going to be like, okay, I know that I'm going to be working for April Bonilla. I need to know what's her preferred communication style, and are we going to be able to get along? Um, Things like that. So I hope that answered your question, Nava. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a good question. Anything else from anyone?
Well, another thing that we discussed with a friend this morning was, whenever they usually ask you if you've encountered a problem and like how did you solve it? And sometimes you may have not encountered a problem, or you may have not worked like any past work experience or things like that. So how do you go around that question?
Yeah, well, one, I would tell you to get work experience while you're in college. I'm always very leery of hiring people who've never had a job. If you're 23 and never had a job, I'm like, what in the world have you been doing? So that's always a concern for me. But you have been a college student, you've been on small groups or teams, you've been in a student organization, sorority, fraternity, you've done something to interact with a larger group. It could be your soccer team. I mean, if you needed to really stretch for it, but we've all encountered conflicts, and that's what they want to know is, are you capable of resolving conflict on your team? And so if you started, I mean, if you told a story, you're like, oh, I was in Block and Bridle and I was the treasurer for Block and Bridle, and we had a problem where some money went missing, and that was a major concern for us. And here's what I did to navigate that. The main thing we're looking for is your ability to communicate and resolve conflicts and issues. So it would be better if it was at work. I would prefer that it be a work situation, but if it was some other situation, that would be fine. And we've all been in, I mean, I guarantee you, every person on this call has been in a group project where you had a lazy team member who didn't pull their weight. I mean, everybody experiences that. So that's a good question.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Peake.
Anything else, guys?
Well, you really are punctual. You started at 12:00 and ended at 12:30. So that's great. Yeah, well, if there's no more questions, thank you so much for joining. This will be posted on YouTube if you ever want to go back to the presentation and kind of remember all of the good tips that Dr. Peake shared with us. And I thank you for your time, Dr. Peake. And I don't know if you want to share your contact information in case anybody has questions afterwards or something like that.
Sure, I'll put it in the text box there. It's jpeake@uga.edu. And yeah, you guys feel free. April and I were talking before they started. It's always funny. Nobody really cares about interview skills until they have an interview. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I need to know everything right now. It's not how it works. You have to learn it ahead of time and build this skill set. I've spent years thinking and working on this kind of stuff. It's nothing you do quickly. I'll tell you guys just another thing. I didn't include this in one thing I really worried about when you interview for a faculty job. My interview at UGA, my first interview, it took 3 days. That was a very long interview. It was very stressful. I was so worried about the dining and dining etiquette that I took dining etiquette classes 3 times. It's called professional dining etiquette because I had no idea how. I mean, I come from a very poor rural area of Kentucky where, we just didn't eat formal sit down meals in a professional setting. It just wasn't part of my life. So you're going to have to be a little bit self-critical and figure out what you need. If that's what you need, go do that. I hit on the stuff that everybody needs, but I also would encourage you to be self-critical, self-evaluate, and to do those very specific trainings that you need. You have to seek them out. But anyway, okay, I digress. April, thank you so much for letting me speak today. Nava, thanks for turning on your camera. It always makes me feel better to see you. And you guys have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Dr. Peake. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.